Hey everybody, hope you guys are all doing really well. Welcome to our third lesson. We are going to take a bit of a different turn with today's lesson. Last time obviously we did a bit of music theory discussing rhythms and how they worked, and then we also talked about melody and how that works within music as well. Now today what we're going to do is we're actually going to discuss recording and how music is recorded and then obviously played back so that you can hear it. So I'm going to do a quick brief history with you guys, and then I'm going to show you guys how modern day recording works in a home studio like I have here. So you'll actually see on the side here, I'm busy recording this microphone as we speak, and you can see little weird lines and things over there, and those are actually called sound waves. So before we talk about how recording came about, we'll do a quick mini science lesson on how sound actually works. Now, sound is basically vibrations in the air. And these vibrations look like waves. So later on you'll see, if we zoom into one of these waveforms here, how the waveform actually looks. So it's actually pretty interesting. Yes, so as I was saying, as I'm speaking now, there are vibrations being caused by my voice in the air, and that is essentially what sound is. Now, the challenge with that is how do you capture that and play it back? And so a guy by the name of Thomas Edison, most of you will know who that is, had a big part to do with the invention of the light bulb. And a couple of other inventions as well, but he created something called a phonograph. Now, basically what a phonograph was is a microphone and a speaker. He spoke into a tube, and what would happen is the vibrations of his voice and of the sound that he was making would be transferred into something called a stylus, like a little needle. I don't know if any of you have ever seen a record player before. Your parents will know all about record players. But a little needle, and that needle would then transmit the vibrations from his voice onto a piece of wax. They used various other materials as well, but mostly it was known for being transmitted onto wax. And it would actually draw the waveform of what he was saying into the wax. And then that could be actually played back by the same little stylus, and that would come out as the sound waves. Now that's a very basic interpretation of that. Well, not interpretation or explanation of that, but that's basically how it worked. And then recording the voice and instruments and so on came later. All right, so after that there was another guy called Emil Berliner, and he I actually have to mention. So Thomas Edison, the wax that was used was on a cylinder, and I'll actually show you guys pictures of this as well. It was found on a cylinder, and what Emil Berliner did, he made it on a flat surface, on a circle. So basically what a record looks like, if any of you have seen that, and so it worked along the same principle. It's just the sound waves were imprinted on a flat surface, which is a lot more efficient and a bit easier to use. And he also created something called the gramophone, which could actually play all the sound coming off of those discs. And if you've seen any of the old movies, it's like a horn sticking out like this, playing the music. And I'll insert a picture of that as well for you guys, just so you're aware of how that works. Now, from there, things moved on a little, and they were able to transfer music onto tape. So this was, I think, from the 1940s to the 1970s, they were able to actually transfer music onto tape. And so from that came tape decks rather. And you could actually play the music back on the tape as well. So you could record it on the tape and you could play it back on the tape. Now there are actually people today who still record to tape because they like the sound of it, because tape gives you a certain characteristic in your music when you record to it. So there are guys that still use that today. But we moved on then off the tape, and music was recorded to CD. All right. Well, it's played back on the CD. It was still recorded to tape for a long time, but how we listened to it wasn't through tape as much anymore, but more with CDs. And then from there, we went on to MP3s, and now we still use MP3s today, obviously, but a big part of what we do today is streaming. And MP3s and even CD, that is basically the digital era of music. And so things changed quite a bit there. So what you're seeing now over here is digital. It's actually quite an amazing process, because what's happening is my voice as I'm speaking now is being picked up by this microphone. And the microphone is picking up the vibrations of my voice, sending it along a cable into a device over there called an interface. And that interface is then taking that signal and it's being processed through a program called a DAW, or DAW, a digital audio workstation, and that's the program you see here, and then that is eventually going to give us the sound that we have. So it's quite a complicated process, but it's insanely good how that is able to accurately play back what I'm saying, or when we record instruments and so forth. So that was just a quick brief history for you guys of how these things came about, just so you guys have a bit of a foundation for it. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to actually check out how a recording session works and how instruments are put together and so forth in a digital environment. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next segment. Hey guys, alright, so this is what a session looks like when you record in today's world. Okay, so basically what you're looking at here are a bunch of different tracks and different instruments that have been recorded into this program here. So I use a program called Studio One, and this program allows me to record and mix and master music in my own studio at home. All right, so just to give you guys a quick just understanding of recording studios, basically what happened, if you wanted to record a song back in the day, you'd have to hire a studio and a sound engineer, and you'd have to pay quite a lot of money to be able to do that. But technology has come so far that we are now able to do it in our houses and get really amazing results through it. So I'm particularly very glad as a musician in today's world that I'm able to do this in my own house, and I don't have to stress about forking out a bunch of cash to be able to do what I love. So I'm just briefly going to go over how the recording process works if you work in a home studio, and just I'm going to play you guys a few snippets of things, and just so you're aware of how things work. It's a really interesting world if you want to get into it. I actually did study this. I studied to be a sound engineer and to do this as well, but to be honest with you, you don't even need to study this stuff to understand it. You just need to spend a bit of time on it. Okay, so the first thing I want to mention is, if we have a look at this here, this is the bass track. So this is where I recorded the bass to. Now I'm going to quickly zoom in over here, just so you guys can have a good look. What you're seeing over here is actually the waveform of the bass. So if you remember, I mentioned that sound is vibrations, and this over here is what that looks like. These are what we call the waveform, and that is what sound looks like. If you guys are interested in knowing, now you know. Yeah, so based on what you can actually tell things based on looking at waveforms like that. Like for instance, if I were to look at this waveform over here where it says D minor pick, this was recorded softer than this. I can tell that by the size of the waveform. And you can tell if something might have been recorded too loudly, because that is possible, and then you'll see the waveform is really high and really big, and that's not always ideal. So you can actually tell things about the music just based on looking at the waveforms. All right, but that's not really what we do. It's all about listening and what works. Okay, so this song is actually the intro song in the video that we do. The intro video that you guys get with the lessons. I wrote the song a while ago and then I mixed it. All right, so there's two phases to creating music. There's the recording phase, and then there's something called the mixing phase. All right, so recording is obviously when you're playing your guitar and you're recording it into the program, or you're singing into it, or playing drums, or whatever instrument you have, and then you record everything and put it together. So if we look at our session here, the yellow waveforms over here and the yellow channels, that is our drums. If we come down a little, the green one here, obviously, as I said before, is the bass. All this purple stuff over here is actually our guitars. All right, now you'll notice there are quite a few guitar tracks here. Now, this can be confusing to people who've never seen it before, because you would assume there should just be one because there's one guitar. But actually, there is one guitar, but I'm recording different things on that one guitar, or different little parts, and then we mix them together, and we'll have a look at that later on as well. And then this thing over here, it's called My Tai. That's just the plugin that's used on here. It's actually a keyboard, and it gives you just basically a weird little sound that I created to sit underneath the music. All right, so that's all about production. Okay, so you can have a look here and see these are the tracks involved. So like I said, you have the recording phase. Then you have something called the mixing phase. And I'm going to open a little window here called Mix. All right, and then it gives you all of these little faders over here. Now what these things do is they actually change the volume of the instruments. Because when we're mixing, what we're doing is we're mixing all the instruments together so that they work really nicely and everything's in its place, and one instrument isn't overpowering another one, and that's where mixing comes in. Now it goes a little deeper than that of course. We have things over here called EQ. So if I open this, I'll go into detail about this at a later stage, but I just want to give you guys the basic concept here. So EQ is basically where I'm raising certain frequencies in an instrument, or taking certain frequencies out that don't work really nicely. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting something called the low mids. So that's between 200 and 500 hertz. And over here, I'm boosting the low frequencies. So that's 50 hertz for a lower sound. And then I'm boosting again over here at what is called our mids, to get a bit of a higher sound in there. All right, so that's just basically how that works. So that's EQ. And then you have something else called compression, and this basically is an automatic volume control. It just makes sure that when the instrument is played, it stays at relatively the same volume throughout, because you don't want to have, like, let's say you have a singer and he got excited at a bridge part of the song or a chorus, and she sings super loud, and then you don't want to have to constantly be turning down the volume over here. So what a compressor does is it actually automatically dips that volume for you with a few settings here. But we're not going to go into detail with that today. I just wanted to talk about it. All right, so if we have a look at the beginning of our song here, right at the start, what it starts with is, let's have a listen. Two things happening there. So we have a guitar being picked, and then we have a little synth piece. So that is this. So this is the guitar. All right, and then underneath the guitar we have this My Tai here, which is a synth, basically like a keyboard sound. So then you can hear it on its own. Okay, so that's how that starts. And then as the song progresses, all the other instruments come in. So the drums are in there and all the guitars are in there and the bass is in there as well. Now I'm going to quickly show you guys how these things are layered. Well, first of all, we want to talk about some of the instruments and the relationships they have. So drums and bass work together really well. So when we mix, we want to make sure we've got a great mix going with our drums and our bass. So let's have a listen to those just together. So that's the cool thing about mixing and stuff. You can actually hear the actual individual instruments on their own. So that's the bass on its own. Then with the drums there, you can hear how they sound together. Alright, cool. So now if we start adding things in, we can see how we layer instruments in a song. So let's put that D minor guitar in there as well. Now we'll add in the keyboard part, the synth. So you can hear how the song is starting to come together now. Alright, now we'll add the rhythm guitars. So that's the left rhythm guitar. The next one will be the right rhythm guitar. Right, okay, so that was all of those instruments together. Now, they're missing one thing, and that's actually the melody guitar. So let's have a listen to that and add that in. So there's the melody guitar on its own. Right, and so that gives you an idea of how we layered things in there. Obviously, as you saw now, there were a couple of guitars being layered on top of each other. All right, and that's typically how we do that. Well, this is a rock song, so it's a very guitar-centric song, and it's an instrumental song as well. So that means that there's no vocalist who sings in this. It's all just instruments. All right, so the guitar has to be really prominent because it's carrying the melody, and the bass and the drums are laying the foundation for your song here. Now, if we quickly have a look at the verse of our song, that'll be over here. Alright, so here we have a verse melody, and that's this guitar. Now there's some other things happening on the side here that might be a little more subtle. Alright, because this part of the song is a little bit more relaxed. So what you'll hear if you guys are wearing headphones, on the left and right speakers, there's these guitars. These are called, well, the effect that they're using is called tremolo, so it has a bit of a stuttering effect. So if we add that with the verse melody, and then we add the bass in, and we add in our drums. Oh, and there's some other guitars also doing things here. So let's actually find that. So within our verse melody, we have that, and then where's that other guitar coming from? Oh, just in the main melody here. So that's sitting in there as well. And then on this part here, we could probably see this is like a pre-chorus. You have this guitar sitting in the middle there with the rhythm guitars. Alright guys, so that's just the basics. I just wanted to go over this with you guys just so you can see kind of what it looks like when you record. and how a song is structured and how the things are put together. Now, like I said before, we will go into more detail on this stuff at a later stage, but this just gives you the general idea of what things look like. If it were a song with a different style, you'd probably find some different instruments, maybe acoustic guitars, maybe a couple of singers, that sort of thing. It depends on the style of the song, what you'll be recording and how you will layer things and put things together. So like I said, this is an instrumental song and it's guitar music really. So it's for all the guitar lovers out there. They'd really be into this kind of thing. That being said, it's not everybody's cup of tea. So there's different styles, and God's given us all different taste in things as well. So as you work with music like this, I've recorded and mixed a bunch of different things. I've done country music, I've done folk music where it's like all super acoustic instruments, no electric guitars or anything like that, just acoustic guitars, acoustic bass, drums, that kind of thing. And everything has its own sort of special and unique thing about it. Okay, guys, I hope that made sense and that you guys learned a little something out of this. I hope you guys have an awesome week further. Have fun. Cheers.